Well, hi, I'm Jeff Strong. I'm creator of the Auditory Brain Stimulation Therapy Rhythmic Entrainment Intervention. I'm also co-founder and creative director of BrainShiftRadio.com. In this video, I want to talk a little bit about the development of REI rhythms. All the rhythms I use for rhythmic entrainment intervention were derived from traditional rhythms that I studied back in the early 80s. And what I did was I morphed them a little bit depending on the responses I got from people, but as well the tempo I was playing in. All traditional therapeutic drumming techniques rely on rhythms that are played within the theta range of consciousness, the theta tempos, anywhere from 4 to around 7 to 8 beats per second. So these are fairly slow. And the idea with theta is an inwardly directed state. We're kind of internally directed. We're less responsive to our world around us. And it's a great place to be for traditional techniques. The lowest technique at 4 beats per second is all about visualization, all about the journeys that one would go on that help kind of inform your life. So it's that experience of being able to kind of take your mind into another place that's really powerful. Mid theta, which is where a lot of the ceremonial drumming comes in, is less inwardly directed, but still much more so than our regular outward wakeful state. And so it's kind of an altered state a little bit. That's where this rhythm that I just played would generally be played at around 6.5, 7 beats per second. And that has a real power to it. And it creates its own kind of feeling. And the thing you can do with this at this tempo is keep it really steady. And that's why the rhythm just kind of has a groove that you settle into. It can be repetitive like this. Your brain, because you're internally directed, you're not thinking about what you're hearing, you're not processing or analyzing what you're hearing. Your brain is just responding. And so it can be repetitive. And I've talked about this a lot. The slower the tempo, the more repetitive a rhythm can be. You get in the faster tempos up into the alpha state of consciousness, 8 beats per second or so, which is where all the REI rhythms are, the REI Custom Program. Now you've got to have rhythms that have a little bit more variability, more complexity, something that can't be deciphered, understood very easily. This rhythm that I just played, and I'll play it again for you at the tempo that's generally played at 6.5, 7 beats per second. You'll get a feel for it. As a matter of fact, just kind of sit back and just let yourself listen to it and feel what it feels like. Any images you get, that's great. Any sensations you have, those are what you're looking for. This rhythm traditionally, by the way, is used to uplift mood. It's used to kind of give you a sense of empowerment. So you kind of settle into that. It feels really good. You kind of want to move to it. And that's what it's designed for. Kind of get you involved in this kind of altered reality where you can just kind of be. Speed this up and you're going to want to listen to it. And it's going to become uncomfortable after a while because your brain's going to have figured it out. So that entrainment mechanism, that really important piece of getting your brain to shift in consciousness, gets disrupted. Your brain doesn't want to shift because it's figured out the rhythms and now wants to move on to something else. So I'll play it faster. Now, you may not get to that point because I'm not going to play it terribly long, but if you listen to this every day, for instance, for a couple weeks, you'd notice that it really doesn't have the same impact on you, and you might get irritated by it. But this is the same rhythm played at about 8 beats per second. That's what it sounds like. So that's the traditional rhythm and ultimately the tempo that I play REI at. And the reason I play REI, Rhythmic Entrainment Intervention, our custom program recordings at this speed is because I want people into an externally directed state. I want them relaxed but still alert. And this is the alpha state of consciousness. It exists between about 8 beats per second to around 13. I like the low end of this, even though you'll find us using a little faster tempos of BrainShift radio. BrainShift radio will go up to 12 beats per second, which is really quick. 8 beats per second seemed like an optimal place when we started doing the research in the early 90s on this process. So that's where the custom program has stayed, because we focused the custom program not on the tempo, but on the rhythms. And they started with these traditional rhythms. So I took a traditional rhythm like this, and this one was all about mood and feelings of uplifting and empowerment. And so I took that as a basis to say, okay, if I'm working with somebody with a mood issue, a mood disorder, depression, or bipolar, would this rhythm have an impact on that long term? Because the whole point with REI is to get people into a relaxed neurological state and then help the brain shift so that it can have different responses to the world. So if you've got somebody who's depressed, there's certain neural pathways that are kind of happening, certain brain chemicals that are happening, certain thought processes that are happening that enable that state to continue. If we can get the brain to shift the way it responds to the stimulus, the thoughts, whatever, maybe we can change the mood. If the traditional rhythm in the traditional context would raise somebody's mood, would that same rhythm or something similar have a long-term impact? And the first thing I noticed was that I can't play that same rhythm at 8 beats per second. It becomes annoying. So I had to change it. And this is partly because these rhythms come from times when we don't have as much stimulus anyway. And so maybe you can take those rhythms back in thousands of years ago and play them faster and still get that same response because they're not inundated with so much stimulus every day. Or maybe not. Maybe just because we're shifted in consciousness, we need more complexity. It doesn't really matter. What I did was start changing the rhythms. And I have another video where I talk about a 2116 rhythm that I show you how I developed that from a traditional ceremonial rhythm. And so if you haven't seen that video, definitely check it out. That's a 2116 rhythm. I go through several stages to show you how I got to that point. This is a rhythm for mood. What I do with this one is a real simple transition. The original rhythm is in 12/8. It's counted 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, or 1 ta ta, 2 ta ta, 3 ta ta, 4 ta ta, or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, which is really a mouthful. But the idea here is that you've got groupings of 3. There are 4 groupings of 3, 2 times through, so it's 2 measures long. So it's kind of like this: 1 ta ta, 2 ta ta, 3 ta ta, 4 ta ta, 1 ta ta, 2 ta ta, 3 ta ta, 4 ta ta, 2 ta ta, 3 ta ta, 4 ta ta, 1 ta ta, 2 ta ta, 3 ta ta, 4 ta ta, 1. Really simple. So when I took that rhythm, I basically decided it needs to be an odd meter. That's basically the trick that I do when I make the first adjustment to a rhythm. I add on or subtract a beat or so. So in this case, 12/8 will turn into 13/8. It makes it more interesting, it makes it more complex, it makes it harder to decipher. Because now you've got not just groupings of 3 going consistently. If you can tap your foot to this 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. It's a very natural thing for us. A lot of music is in groups of 3s or 2. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, or 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and. We get to tap our foot to it, we get very comfortable with it, it's familiar. You take it and you turn it into 13/8, for instance, like I'm going to do. Now you can't do that because it's no longer 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3 all the way through. In this case, it's 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. So that's how I'm going to change it. So I'm basically adding an extra beat in the grouping of 3 that has the bass tone the first time through. And so I'm just going to play the first measure initially. I'll play it slowly. You can kind of see how it feels. As a matter of fact, I'm going to play the 12/8 a couple times through, 4 times through, just that first measure, so you can get a sense for what that is, and then I'm going to play it in 13/8, and you can see how the difference is. Then I'll slow it down, and we can play this break this down together. So it goes like this: traditional in 12/8. Pretty simple. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Now I'm going to put the 4 in there, so now we're in 13/8. It's going to go like this. Very minor change, but very different feel. Let me count this for you and show you how I did it. When I add an odd meter to these traditional rhythms, if I'm just adding one beat, I'll often double up a hand stroke. That way the rest of the downbeats stay the same. You'll notice with the traditional rhythm, that 12/8, I'm alternating the downbeats. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, right, left, right, left, right, left, right, left, right, left, right, left. And that gives it a certain feel. And when I add that extra beat on there, I want the rest of the feel to have a similarity. And so what I'm going to do here is that grouping of 4, I'm going to do a paradiddle, a right paradiddle. So it's, instead of being right, left, right, and then left going in, it's going to be right, left, right, right, so the left can go into the next beat. So to count it in, it goes like this. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. That's the gist of it. It's fairly simple. It'll take a minute to get the feel because it's becoming fluid with the double stroke. Switching your mind to not be thinking of 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. It takes a shift. But you would get it if you practiced it at any length of time. So let me play this a little bit up to tempo so you can get a sense for what it feels like. And then we'll do the second bar. So here's the first bar in 13/8. It's kind of cool. I like the fact that it has that extra beat in it. The second measure, we're going to switch it around a little bit because there's a double pickup, a double stroke kind of a pickup beat going in on the bass tone on the third grouping of 3 in this measure, and I want to keep that pulse the same. So rather than doing the 4 beats on that third beat of the measure, I'm going to put it on the last beat of the measure. So the 12/8 version goes like this: 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1. I want to keep the same boom boom going on, and so the 13/8 version is going to go like this: 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So I'm just doubling up that left hand, so I'm doing a left-handed paradiddle this time. And the reason for that is because that 4th beat starts with the left hand anyway. So the first measure, we're taking the 3rd beat and doing a right-handed paradiddle to bring it into 4. And on the second measure, we're taking the 4th beat and doing a left-handed paradiddle. So I'm going to play the 12/8 straight up, both measures a little bit so you can get a feel for what they're all about. Then I'm going to switch into playing the 13/8 measures and so you can see how different that is. So 12/8. and 13/8. So it's got a nice groove to it too, even though we added those beats. I kind of like it that way more so than the regular triplet, but then I tend to like the odd meters anyhow. So that's how kind of I morphed this basic kind of uplifting rhythm into an REI type rhythm. Start with the core rhythm, the traditions. They're generally in 4/4 or 12/8 time, very straight ahead. I'm speeding them up. I just played it a little slower actually than 8 beats per second. So when I end here, I'm going to jump into this at 8 beats per second so you can see what it feels like. See if it changes your mood. See if you find it annoying. I'm sure you won't, because it's going to be 13/8. So it's not enough for your brain to catch on to. Now this is another trick to our recordings in that we ask that they be played quietly in the background. We don't want to be actually sitting and listening and trying to analyze what we're hearing. We're not actively listening to REI rhythms. The idea here is that we're stimulating the brain, the primitive brain, to get entrained and then to respond to the specificity of the rhythms. And this works best when it's in the background. We're thinking about other things and we're engaged in our world around us, and it's just on. That gets our brain to work on trying to decipher the patterns and respond. That's where entrainment works best anyway. And that seems to be where the specificity of the rhythms work best as well. So I'm going to play at 8 beats per second this rhythm for a little bit, and I'll see you in the next video.